As per the latest reports, Chief Yevgeny Prigozhin was presumed dead on Wednesday after a plane crash north of Moscow, which left no survivors. The notorious mercenary leader led an abortive mutiny against the Russian military earlier this year, with speculations and suspicions currently rife over what has happened. Neither the Kremlin nor Russian Ministry of Defense commented on Prigozhin's death. Authorities say that all 10 people on board the plane, including 7 passengers and 3 crew members, were killed. Prigozhin's right-hand man and Wagner co-founder Dmitry Utkin is believed to be among the ones who died. The private jet crashed en route from Moscow to St. Petersburg, some 100 kilometers north of Russian capital. Flight tracking data shows the plane taking off from Moscow on Wednesday evening and its transponder signal disappearing minutes later. It crashed in a rural region with no nearby airfields where the jet could have landed safely. All 10 bodies have been recovered, said Russia's emergency service on Thursday morning. The crash immediately raises suspicions, since leading an armed mutiny in Russia on 24 June, which saw Wagner mercenaries march on Moscow, Prigozhins have kept a low profile. At the time, President Vladimir Putin denounced the rebellion as treason and stabbed in the back, vowing to avenge it. These charges against Prigozhin were soon dropped in a secretive deal that exiled the mercenary force to Belarus. But the mercenary chief, whose troops were some of the best fighting forces for Russia in Ukraine, has since reportedly popped up in Russia. The crash also comes after Russian media reported a top general linked to Prigozhin was dismissed from his position and commander of the Air Force. Yevgeny Prigozhin, founder of the Russian Wagner Group mercenary force, soared in prominence after Russia's February 2022 invasion of Ukraine, where his fighters, including thousands of convicts he recruited from prison, led to Russian assault on the city of Bakhmut in the longest and bloodiest battle of the war. Prigozhin used social media to trumpet Wagner's successes and wage a feud with the military establishment, accusing it of incompetence and even treason. In June, Prigozhin led a mutiny in which Wagner fighters took control of the southern city of Rostov-on-Don and shot down a number of military helicopters, killing the pilots as they advanced towards Moscow. President Vladimir Putin called it an act of treachery that would meet with a harsh response. Born in St. Petersburg in 1961, Prigozhin spent 9 years in Soviet prisons for crimes including robbery and fraud. Released in 1990 amid the Soviet Union's death throes, he launched a career as a caterer and restaurateur in his hometown. Leveraging political connections, Prigozhin was awarded major state contracts, becoming known as Putin's chef after catering for Kremlin events. In 2014, Prigozhin founded Wagner, a private military company whose fighters have deployed in support of Moscow's allies in countries including Syria, Libya, and the Central African Republic. The United States has sanctioned it and accused it of atrocities, which Prigozhin has denied. Now, what is the Wagner Group? Founded by Prigozhin in 2014, Wagner is a private military company that supported Kremlin objectives on the battlefields in Ukraine, the Middle East, Latin America, and Africa, where it's been accused of committing human rights abuses. At its peak, Wagner had about 50,000 mercenary recruits, many of them ex-inmates recruited directly from prison fighting in Ukraine. The US designated the group as a transnational criminal organization earlier this year, and Wagner has been sanctioned by Australia, Canada, Japan, the UK, and the European Union. Now, what's happened to Wagner since the mutiny? The Wagner fighters that came within 200 kilometers of the Kremlin and killed at least 13 Russian pilots on their march avoided punishment under a deal that saw them dramatically turn back. Some, including Prigozhin himself, then relocated to neighboring Belarus, whose leader helped broker the deal to end the mutiny. It wasn't clear how many took up an offer to sign up with the Defense Ministry forces, but Prigozhin popped up in Moscow within days of the failed mutiny, attending talks in the Kremlin with Putin in a shock to observers who'd predicted the Wagner founder's exile. In another apparent affront to Putin's authority, Prigozhin was pictured mingling with African leaders at a Russia-Africa summit in St. Petersburg last month. What is his relationship with the President Vladimir Putin? It was complicated to say. An oligarch, Prigozhin was thought to be close to the Russian leader. He was called Putin's chef. due to the services he provided to Kremlin and the personal touches he employed when Putin dined in his restaurants. In June, when he launched his mutiny against Moscow, Prigozhin must have realized that he had gone too far with his public rebukes. The only general he admired, Sergei Surovikin, released a video message telling him to stand down and to obey Putin. Prigozhin soon disbanded the march, saying he wanted to spare Russian blood. Afterward, the mercenary leader said he met with Putin before leaving for what was expected to be exiled in Belarus. What will happen to the Wagner group now? It's unclear because some of the Prigozhin's top lieutenants were also on the plane, leaving a major void at the top of the organization. Bloomberg reported. Those men include Dmitry Utkin, a former military intelligence officer who has been a key figure in Wagner since its founding in 2014 to support a Russian-backed insurgency in the eastern Ukraine, which laid to the groundwork of the current conflict. Valery Cherkaskov, who ran Wagner's sprawling business operations in the Middle East and Africa, was also on board, authorities said. There have been indications that Wagner's business empire might be taken over by other Russian groups or government agencies, but that hasn't been confirmed. Wagner chief Yevgeny Prigozhin, that what we know so far.